slides, introductory slides, about the NOAA projects repository in the VLab, and then we're going to follow up that with a sort of training session for you all so you can learn the basics for entering in your project data into this repository. And that's really the goal here, is to have Central Region be big players in providing the type of information that we're looking for to populate this database. So the basic question is what is the NOAA projects repository in the VLab? And there are sort of two answers to this. It's a web interface in the VLab. Firstly, that allows NOAA employees to investigate and compare research and development projects that are active in the agency for the purpose of improving collaboration and research to application situational awareness. So I'll talk a little bit more in a second here about what R2A means explicitly, but suffice to say, the Weather Service has been criticized by recent outside independent studies to the effect that we don't really know what's going on in terms of innovation and development in our own agency. That's sort of a wild, wild west, and things are not coordinated. And because of that, there are redundant activities happening and resources are being unnecessarily wasted. So they basically called for us to get our act together. And one of the ways we can do that is to sort of provide a means to share amongst ourselves what it is we're working on at the project level. So one of the goals here is for this projects repository is to provide a mechanism for that to happen, for people across the Weather Service and across NOAA to provide that information so that everyone can come to one location and find out what's going on, and before a new project is initiated, for example, check to see if somebody else is already working on it, and maybe joining them in their effort rather than starting up something independent and brand new. So that is a strategic goal, and believe me, I see that operating on a daily basis still in Weather Service, where somebody will come up and say, oh, I've got this thing, and I'll have no clue that they were working on it, and it turns out they're working on it for 6 years, you know. So we've got, this is definitely a gap in our capability within Weather Service and certainly in NOAA. The second purpose of this web interface is to allow owners of NOAA R&D projects to input their data into a central location for the purpose of this FY15 Research to Application Performance Measure pilot. And so research to operations or research applications is a big deal for NOAA and for Weather Service, and our executive leaders are very eager for us to be able to provide sort of some answers to them on how we're doing in this area, and in order that they can go to Congress and say, look, here's what we're doing in NOAA, this is where we're doing a good job, and here's where we need more resources to do even better. And without information, without ammunition, we make their jobs very difficult. So part of this thing is our participation will help our leaders in NOAA, Dr. Spinrad and Dr. Sullivan, make a better case for us. So let me talk quickly about the aspects of this pilot. So research to applications is defined to have sort of three flavors. R2O, which is research operations, that's what we deal with almost exclusively in Weather Service, but not completely. And that's developing things that eventually become operational in our mission critical systems like AWIPS or the NCEP supercomputer. There's another flavor called R2C, it's commercialization. So some things are viable candidates for patents and licenses and creatives, so they fall into that category. And then there's a third catch-all category, R2U, or transition to other uses, which, believe it or not, actually is a fairly significant activity in NOAA, where research or development is done for the purposes of informing policy and regulations, resource management, public education, etc. An example is NOS carries out some sort of research study about that allows resource management decisions to be made with regard to establishing offshore wind farms off the Atlantic seaboard, for example. So they carry out some research and then provide that to decision makers. The climate assessment studies are also examples of research which is done, which can inform governmental policy and regulations. There are sort of three kind of transition models that are in play for these different flavors of R2. The one that we're familiar with in Weather Service is a pass baton, I'll call it, where some development organization or field office develops something and brings it to some state of capability that is deemed suitable for operations and a benefit to operations, and then they work with the receiving organization to actually integrate that into the AWS baseline or into the IDP web farm or whatever. This type of transition requires close coordination between who is doing the transition, the sending, and who's doing the receiving. There's usually a explicit, detailed transition plan with milestones and a schedule, etc. And if the milestones aren't met, then the transition is less successful or runs into problems. The tech transfer model is governed by the legislation which covers patents and licenses, etc., and that's handled by NOAA's Technology Partnership Office. They have a website. You can go to it, Google it, and if you're interested in that. Weather Service does patent some of its stuff, so it's not unheard of, although it doesn't happen all that often. And then the last is sort of the unformed transition model, or no form, you could say, where sometimes things are done for R&D effort for some stakeholder group, but it's not clear how they apply it. We sort of let them know, and it's up to them when they use it or if they use it. So or a message in a bottle where we sort of publish something, and then later on, it's some point it's used by somebody, but we don't know who. So it's important that we measure our performance in these areas, no matter what type of transition we're doing. So I like to say that NOAA has a research and development ecosystem, to use a popular term these days. But I think it is descriptive of what we have. We have 12,000 employees. We got 5 line offices. We have 7 research labs and cooperative institutes and operational systems. And all of these sort of get resources thrown at them, and they're subject matter experts working in here doing innovative things, including our field offices and regional headquarters. And out of that comes great new things that we want to bring to bear on operations to provide better services and products to the public. But we really don't know exactly how that works as a collective sort of ecosystem, and it's really challenging to try to measure how successful it is. So a framework that we have borrowed from NASA, which has also been adapted to some degree in DoD, is technical readiness levels. And this is a simple scale model that assesses the technical readiness or technology readiness of certain projects. And it's broken out in a sort of 4-phase framework, where at the lower levels are kind of research, concept, exploration, and then you've got development, things which are being actively worked on, and then demonstration, and finally applications or operations, if you will. So you may ask, well, why do we want to look at this? So I'll show you sort of 2 extremes of a spectrum of how things might exist in NOAA. You could look at this one extreme, which is a very effective model where you have sort of a wide pyramid base, which lots of like sort of researchy, prototypey projects, but only a small percentage of those actually move up into development, because every step you go up in this pyramid, it costs more. increasingly more. Of those, say, 2,000 projects, then maybe half of those get to a demonstration level. But we would like to think that when something is fully demonstrated and shown to be successful, that it's quickly transitioned into operations, and we're very effective at doing that. The opposite sort of end of the spectrum would look like this, the ineffective model, where you see that there's a lot of prototyping projects move into a development phase, probably unnecessarily, and then a lot of those also quickly move into demonstration mode, but there's a bottleneck at the end. So things sort of get stuck in a perpetual demonstration mode, which drains resources from the R&D units and research laboratories, and a lot of frustration builds in as well. So this is the sort of the nightmare scenario that we hope doesn't exist, but probably does in certain areas. But the bottom line is we don't know what the picture is in NOAA. Therefore, we don't know what the problems are, and therefore it's tough for us to make a case that our leadership can present to Congress for helping us out with more funding. So, so the question you may be asking yourselves is, why is it important that Central Region participate in this exercise? So number one, I would say, is that so Central Region gets credit for the R&D and innovations that they develop, and which eventually may transition operations. So we know things like the Blender project. Central Region has been a big player in the IRIS project, which are both things which are currently transitioning operations. And we want to know about these things as early on as possible. So that's one of the tenets of good R2O, is that we know about stuff way in advance, so we can adequately prepare and get budgets in line to receive those things and make sure that we're ready for them. So we want to know what Central Region is doing now, even if it's in a sort of fledgling state or just used in a couple of offices, because that information can be highly valuable. Number two is so that Weather Service contributes to this effort in a good faith way to get the leadership in NOAA the stuff they need to get us more funding. We want to make our agency look good, and bottom line is so that we can actually get better. So knowing what the problems are is really obviously key to knowing how to fix them. Up until now, we sort of operate on an anecdotal mode. Oh, this particular project went bad, and etc. But we have no idea if that particular project that so-and-so knows about is representative of anything. So it's really tough to make strategic decisions to improve when you're dealing with anecdotal case studies of projects gone bad, so to speak. So we're really hoping that Central Region is going to be a big player and submit a lot of projects. In a moment, and here I'm going to hand this over to Mike Giebler, who developed the portlet, to show you how to do that. And we've really put a lot of effort to try to make it quick, simple, easy, and intuitive. And we'll hope that you will be ready to try it out, right after this session. So, Mike, I'm handing it over to you.
Okay. I'll be sharing my screen here in just a second. Okay, so here's the projects repository portlet. It's located in the virtual lab. And first, I just want to give you a quick overview of the first page here and how you go about finding different projects, finding what's already out there in the projects repository. So one thing is we basically just have this grid view that pages through the different projects, 10 items per page, and you can navigate through the different pages with the different buttons over here. And once you find a project that you might be interested in, the description's been abbreviated in the grid just to save space, but you can hover over the little icon and it'll pop up the full description there. Also in the project name, there's a hyperlink in there. You can click on that, and that'll take you to a full description of that project with all the information in there. And then in order to find projects, we've added some different search capabilities. In the grid itself at the top, we have some of these labels are sortable. If you, on this project name, currently the projects are sorted in ascending order alphabetically. If I click on that title in the table here, it'll search in descending order. So it's a way of doing that. And that'll be the headers that are underlined here are the ones that are sortable. Also, in this top section, it's a toolbar. We have a search feature here, and if you enter something in here, it'll search through multiple fields in this grid. And you'll get some results that way. So if you know some keywords in the description or something like that, that's a quick way to find some projects there. We also have an advanced search feature, and that shows up right here. It's hidden to save space. Click on that, and it'll bring up a advanced search form. Give you an example here. We had this tutorial for the southern region yesterday, and they've entered some information here. So that'll pull up everything that they've entered and added the southern region as their source organization. And then you can refine this search further with some of these other fields. It'll narrow this down even further if you ended up getting a long list with that initial search. And that'll narrow that down a little bit further. So that's how the different search features work in the system, and how you can view the projects once you located it. So the next thing I wanted to go over was how you go ahead and enter projects into the system. Up here in the toolbar, first of all, we have a help button here. We have a user's guide. So if you needed some help, you can find that in the user's guide. It'll bring that up. We also have a feature where you can request a demo for your group, or if you find any issues with the repository, we have a method for you to report issues on that for us to follow up on and try to figure those things out. But to add a project is the next one over here. Is an Add Project button. You click on that, and you get a multi-step form to enter that information. And most of these steps are pretty short and sweet, so they're not too bad. And we try to let you know which fields are required. We put a little notice next to that saying these fields are required.
Mike, if you get a chance, could you maximize your screen? Thanks.
Sure. And then on this description, it's you can put a pretty lengthy description in here. This will expand, so you have a lot of space if you want to put a good long description in there. And then navigating through the form, you can do that. At the bottom here, we have previous and next buttons. You can also navigate by clicking on the different numbers at the top. And on step 2, which is the project owner information, we pre-populate it with the information from the person that's logged into the system. And we don't have phone number information, so you'll have to enter that, and that's a required field. But if you're entering this information for somebody else, you can change this owner information. We're just trying to default and make it easier for those that are entering information here. Step 3 goes into the project details. We have the line office, be the National Weather Service for all of you. And we have different organizations, the project owner organization up here. And these fields are you can navigate through these two different ways. We have a drop-down button that'll give you the full list, and that gets kind of lengthy, so it can be kind of hard to find these. So we made this a searchable field as well.
So put in CR, Mike. There you go.
There we go. So if you type in the CR, that makes it pretty easy to find. I'm not sure. There might be some variance on some of these. So
you might want to further applying organization would. Applying organization could probably be, you know, like IDP, NCEP. Excuse me, NCO. Thank you.
There
you go.
All right. All right, and then same with the target system. We have the drop-down option. So far, that isn't. It's getting longer every day. But that's searchable as well. You can type it in as well as do the drop-down on that. And then the last item on this step is the TRL, the technical readiness level. That's a drop-down. And we tried to provide a little bit of a description next to each number to give you an idea of which one to pick on that. And step 4 and step 5 are optional fields. Step 4 is if you have a transition plan associated with this, you go ahead and select yes here. If there's a transition date, you need to uncheck the no transition date here, and then you can type add the transition date here. You can navigate through this little widget, or you can just type the date in here if you want. And also here you can, if you expand this, there's a option to actually attach a file that specifies that transition date. You just click on the browse, and you can navigate to that and select it, and that'll get attached to the project. And the last step is optional categorization. Categories are predefined. If you click on the select, you'll get a list of the different categories that you can attach to this. And the tags are not predefined. Those are free-form, and you can put whatever you want in here as a tag to help identify these projects. And after all those are filled out, you can click the Save button. And that completes the initial entry of that project. It takes you back in case you want to enter a second project. You can start doing that right now. Or if you're all finished, you can click this back button right up here. And it'll take you back to that original page with the grid. And when you hit that back button, it does sort that automatically by the modified date in descending order. So yours should show up right there on the top. And I want to point out to you on this, we have a status column here with different statuses, and initially this will show up as a pending status, and what that means is right now only yourself and the line office approver can see that entry until it's been approved. And then once it's been approved, it'll change to this active status, and then everyone can see that project at that point. And we just have a quick, simple, one-step approval process, and for Weather Service, Steve is the approver for that. He'll get an email notification and go out and do that. And just a quick sanity check on that is basically all that is on that. So that's how that works. And actually at this point, you as the person that entered this data can go ahead and edit it. Say you realized you made a mistake. You can go out here and do a quick edit on this if you wanted to. And now that this project has actually been created, we also have an option to attach documents if you want to, in addition to the transition plan. And this just is it's a drag and drop option, or you can select a button and select files like we did on the transition plan as well. Okay, and there it is again, and you can see that my edit has been applied there. Also wanted to just quick mention when you're browsing through these, if you did attach a transition plan, I see this project here with the transition plan, you can download that and view that right from here if you wanted to. That's actually a pretty big one. I probably should have selected a different one. It's in a couple more seconds here. Okay, and that is the basic rundown on that. We do have some options if for some reason the target system your project needs to go to doesn't show up in the list. We have an option here on this manage. You can manage target systems and add that target system through this interface. There's just 3 fields for that. That's simple. Same with the organizations. The entry form for that looks the same. And here we can go back to the main page by clicking on the icon here on the left. It'll take you back to the main page. And also, we give you a way to navigate to that entry form as well, right from this page. So if you did not see the target system you're looking for here, you could click this button and it'll take you to that same form, and you can add that target system if you needed to.
You want to show the reports?
Oh, certainly. Also, yeah, the end result on all this is, compiling some information. We have some reports that are dynamically compiling this information. And right now we have a bar chart on how many projects are at each technical readiness level. You can see here there are 6 at the TRL 8 level, and that's listed out down here as well. The pie chart on the right shows what the percentages are. So this 31%, that's the TRL level 8. There are 31% of them at that level. You can see there's some 5%ers over here. If you hover over those, it'll give you a pop-up showing what level that is associated with, as well as a corresponding color on the right. Gives you that. That's the key on here. We have 2 other reports down at the bottom, which are very similar, except this is based on the TRL phase, and we have the phases are just different groupings of the TRLs. So TRL level 1 and 2 is the research phase, 3 through 5 is development, 6 through 8 is demonstration, and TRL 9 is at deployment, implementation, or operational transition. And the bar charts again are the number at each phase, and the pie chart is the percentage at each phase. And those are the reports that we have so far, and we have some ideas for some additional ones as well. So we'll probably have some additional reports in the near future on that.
So, for the purposes, as I was stating at the beginning, we're interested in getting projects at all TRL levels. That's part of the big picture for NOAA. And I know in the past, Central Region has had I think it's the NIAB, where people had, some suggestions. I think they were for improvements. Some of those may or may not have been R&D projects per se, but if they were, they would certainly be suitable candidates to go into this database. In the past, Jeff Craven may remember some of this. I mean, we were asked to do this by NOAA with OAR and Weather Service about 4 or 5 years ago, and collect projects across the agency and then sort of align them up with what OAR was working on. And we did that with Excel spreadsheets, and it was extremely painful to do that. It just was a lot of manual labor. So hopefully we've solved that now by providing, this interface where people can come, and it's sort of semi-automatic. You just enter in your stuff, and as Mike was saying, I'll get an email, and basically I'm just going to do a sanity check, and maybe I can correct some things if I find them, or I might ask the person who submits to fix something. But by and large, I'm going to approve everything, and because we're trying to see what the lay of the land is, and so the more people participate, the better sense we get, or the more robust the results will be, and give us a better indication of what's really going on. So so the thing, if you're on the fence and you say should I or shouldn't I would say go ahead and do it. Submit whatever you think you should, and that's probably the way to go. If you, as Mike showed, if you have something you want to fix, you're totally empowered to fix it. You have edit control. You can go in there and change the description, change the transition date, change basically anything. And we do want you to change the TRL level if the TRL level does advance. So, for example, if you have something that is put through a test bed, a NOAA test bed, or some other test bed, and it passes some test and it's now at a higher level, then you should go in and increase that TRL level. So maybe Mike can, along in that drop-down menu, you can see the TRL history, and so we're interested in seeing, how long does something take at a particular stage? How quickly does it take to go from 2 to 6 or 2 to 9 or whatever? And projects that don't, we're interested in knowing about projects that don't get beyond the development phase. They basically there's a decision made that they shouldn't go beyond. I mean, so projects which don't pan out, for example, that's part of this picture that we want to know about. So,
Steve?
Yeah, go ahead.
Nice had a question. He was curious, I guess when you were going through the selecting all the various organizations as you entered the new project, he wanted to know how you would capture which CSWU, which WFO, which RFC was the owner of the project, because it looked like, I guess, you only went down to Central Region.
Yeah, so that's a call that we've made so far. So we could, to leave it at that level in order to not have thousands and thousands of organizations, that we might revisit that. We might revisit that at some point, but the way you could indicate in the transition plan, for example, or some additional documents that you uploaded, you could indicate specifically which office within a region that it came from. But we'd like to kind of keep it at this level at this point, because we're going to be dealing with all of NOAA, and so feel like that's at a first cut, we want to keep it a little bit less granular.
One other option they could potentially implement would be to use the tags. If there was a coordinated effort that went up.
Absolutely. That's a really good. Mike, did you show the tags?
Yeah, very briefly I did.
Yeah, why don't you go back to that for a second and show people how they could do that. That's an excellent idea, John.
All right, that's on the categorization step. And so I added the one tag here.
So you could put WFO lacrosse, or the or the three-letter identifier. So that would, John Ice, that would be a way to sort of work that issue. So then, if people searched, why don't you for that one you put it in there, Mike, and then show how searching on WFO lacrosse would find that project.
Okay, I'm not sure if it'll show up in here, but if it doesn't, well, it should on the. Oh, it did actually. So it found it by the tag. So we don't really display the tags in here. So, but it will find it. Maybe we need to add a column or something on that.
Yeah. So John Ice, that seems to be another. That might be the nicest way to handle if you want to get attribution to a specific field office. That might be the way to do it. So, other questions or comments? Okay. Well, very good. As I, just want to reiterate, like I was saying at the beginning, we will be looking forward to seeing some Central Region projects in there, as many as possible. There's a few Southern Region in there, but we're going to continue to beat the bushes because our bosses, are going to be looking for this. So I really hope that folks can find the time to enter in the basics and help us out with this effort. I think as this database becomes filled out, it's going to be extremely valuable resource for not just Weather Service, but all of NOAA to see the good work that we're doing. Which up until this point, we really had a hard time knowing that at the project level. So this is, I will be working, if there's any projects that are explicitly included in the ST&I annual operating plan, they are going to have to be in here, and I will be working with those project owners to get those data in there. So I think a couple of those may have some Central Region.
Yeah, Steve, I appreciate. We will start populating this. The question will be trying to figure out whether we want lots of hands in the cookie jar at first, or if we want to start drafting them out and then letting those working on the project come in as they gradually learn the process. So it's not a matter of if, but just when. For example, there is a C-STAR project at Iowa State in Central Region, but there's no Sioux there. So at Des Moines, we've got the job out. So there's certain logistics and people trying to figure out.
Sure.
But yeah,
sure.
Because again, it would be obvious that the project leader would want to go ahead and do this, but we're still in the process of trying to figure out exactly how we want to manage this. Again, is this each Sioux comes in and does their own thing? I think at some point, yes, but maybe not immediately. But we will get some content on there here in the coming weeks for sure. Because there are several projects. There's some projects that aren't even at the national level that are being tracked at the at the regional level that we need to certainly get in there.
Yeah, completely understand, Jeff. That at this point, it's worth putting some thought in how you want to do this, and it'll be a evolution, I think, to some steady state. Ideally, I agree that the best situation is to empower the project owners who are actually like working on it and trying to make progress to be the people who keep this stuff current, because they're going to be the most motivated to do that. But that's a cultural, I think, a cultural change that may take some time. But yeah, totally on board. Do the best you can. Socialize it. I'm seeing, already I'm learning stuff that I didn't know was happening. So I can see it's already illuminating things that needed some light shown on them. So any other questions or comments?
Anybody? We have about 7 Sioux in attendance and about 4 or 5 from regional headquarters on the call. So pretty good attendance, given all the things that we're always there's a lot of different calls today. So I appreciate everyone jumping on, and we're continuing to feel our way through how to do this. And John Ice is leading the team, and several of the team members are on the call that are looking into how we might go about doing this and what the expectations are of who might manage this. So we appreciate your patience, and everybody on the call, we appreciate your patience in us trying to organize this. So thanks for attending.
Hey, Jeff, I got one question.
Sure.
There was some talk about having your projects approved. Do you have to have your project approved before it shows up and stuff? I mean, can you go in a little more detail on that process?
Who asked the question, just so I...
This is Ed and Jackson.
Okay. So the way that works is that the person who fills it out will press the save button, and then I will get an email saying there's a new project in the database waiting your approval. And I'll go look at it. I'll do a sanity check on it. But I'm going to approve like 99.9% of them. I may come back to you and say, did you mean this TRL level instead of that one? Or did you mean this organization instead of that one? But I'm going to be approving them all. But we put that in place so that there is kind of a quality control step. But it's really not an approval per se. We're going to approve practically everything.
There's several Steve Smiths. What exactly is your email?
STEPHAN, Stefan, actually. But when the project's submitted, then I'll get it, and I'll have the submitter's email. I'll be able to contact them directly. So just getting back, I mean, I really think in Weather Services case, we got a great story to tell, and this database is going to help us tell that story. So I really, and all you who are communicating this to your staffs and so forth, I think that's the way to approach it. We're doing great work. We're innovating. We're moving stuff along, and we just want to give that information, provide that so that becomes clear, that we get credit for the good work we're doing. I think that's a really powerful message, and I think we're gonna look really good in NOAA as an agency that's totally focused on this effort and has, we know that's the case. We just need to show it, and now we have the ability to show it.
Is it Stephen A. or Stephen I? On the email.
It's STEPHAN.Smith.
Oh, Stephen. Okay, I got it. Sorry about that.
No problem.
John Ice had another question that I just saw in the chat window, and I think maybe Mike Giebler could help him out. He wants to know how would the SSD/STI chief go in and see all the projects that were entered from NWS Central Region?
hold on here a second. That would be in the advanced search. That would probably be the source organization. Would that be right?
Yes, I think so.
So you type that right there, click the search, and they'll show up here as a source organization here. There's the demo project that I entered earlier. So that would be a quick way of doing it.
Okay, and then he also had another question about transition dates. He wants to know how one determines that.
Well, the transition date is before it happens is a plan date. So it's whatever is currently in the transition plan, if its plan exists. After it has already occurred, it's the date when it happened. So up until it happens, it's a plan. And after it happens, it's what was the case.
Okay. And then he would also like to know, should this be used for tracking AOP goal projects?
The answer is depends on what the goal project is. If it's an R&D project, the answer is almost 100% yes, it should be in here. And if it's an SC&I project, I'm going to, Ming-Ji's given me sort of like the responsibility to make sure the SC&I AOP projects are in here.
All right, I think I covered all of his questions.
John's usually very verbose. It's not to have him work through a translator. It's unusual.
I'm assuming he doesn't have a mic.
I guess so. Yeah.
Oh,
I got. Okay, thank you, John. I understand. Yes. Or you had laryngitis or something. All right. So if there's nothing else, I think we're good. You can contact us through the vlab.admin@noaa.gov, or you can send emails to us directly if you can find out the right Steve Smith. Just kidding. But we're looking forward to this, and I think Central Region has a tremendous amount to bring forward and populate. So, all right, everyone, thank you, and be talking to you soon.
All right, thanks.